democracy arises from an instinct that the exercise of power should be accountable to those who are affected by it. That arbitrary authority is inherently suspect, and the exercise of public voice should never be an unwelcome transgression. The foundational principle of democracy is that the interests and values of society, or of any organisation that is democratic, should be collectively, self-consciously and autonomously determined by citizens rather than by elites or bureaucracies. But unfortunately, there's a worrying gap between the lofty principles of democracy and the everyday practices of polities and organisations that claim to be democratic. Firstly, there's a gap because while the promise of democratic politics is that everyone in society, regardless of their economic status, their gender, their ethnicity, their age, are free to address and remedy the problems that affect them, there's a widespread perception amongst many people that policies are constructed and decisions are made over the heads of people. That even though they appear to be asking you what you think, decisions are made well beyond ordinary people. Secondly, democracy is marred by a conspicuous deficit of trust. When people are presented with facts, with narratives, with advice, whether it's by managers, by governments, by boards of directors or others in authority, they simply don't know who or what to believe. Thirdly, things are complex. Organisations are complex. Making decisions is a complex matter. And the opportunity to share and compare and argue and resolve issues with others is simply not around for enough people. There's not enough deliberation going on. And finally, a gap between principle and practice is that the loudest and the most powerful voices in societies, in organisations, often reflect certain groups more than others. Very often those who've got more time, those who feel more confident, those who feel that they've got plenty of experience. So there's a strong argument for saying, let's rethink the way we do democracy. Let's think about another way of using the tools around us to make democracy work. And at the centre of all of that are tools of communication. How do we communicate democracy? This has always been a crucial relationship between how people govern themselves and how they talk to each other. Technologies and practices of communication are more than a means of just delivering messages. They shape the way that we think about each other. They shape the way that we listen to each other. They shape the way that we compare information and resolve differences. So it's fundamentally important that when something like the internet comes along, we start to ask questions about how we can use it in ways that might make the democracy globally, of our country, and of an organisation like the WEA work better. Now, strengthening democracy calls for more than the application of digital add-ons and obsolete structures being modernised through gimmickry. We need to rethink the very practice of democracy, and we need to ask, what do people need to be able to do for a democracy to work? And I want to argue they need to be able to do four things. They need to be able to share experiences. So I want to suggest that in the workshops that follow this, we look at those four fundamental democratic capabilities: sharing experience, access to broad information, mechanisms for disagreement and deliberation, and making a difference. And start to think in practical ways. How can we use modern communication technologies to make all of those things a reality within a modernised 21st century reinvented democracy?